It's 7:47. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on your TV, on your radio, of course, DAB Plus as well, online, so you can watch us wherever you are. Kimberly has been in touch. She's watching us in Riyadh this morning.
Oh,
Good
wow.
morning to you.
And Gillian says, my heartthrob was Steve McQueen. How could we forget Steve McQueen? He was gorgeous. We're talking about heartthrobs. Got lots of ideas for you a bit later on.
Let's bring you up to date with some of the newspapers this morning. Mail on Sunday has Suella Braverman hitting back at Sir Elton John because he criticised the government's handling of migration.
The Observer leading with a story that the Education Secretary has kept secret files on people who are critical of their policies.
Independent has Tories heading for a wipeout at the next election, according to a new poll.
Oh, they'll love reading that this morning. The Sunday Telegraph leads with the Defence Secretary's comments that British troops are going to be sent to Ukraine to help train their troops.
And Daily Star Sunday, oh dear me, is talking about an England star who got a bit romantic with someone but left his socks on. As if we care. Why
That
not?
is a real front page lead, isn't it?
They might have had cold feet. Let's Tom, because we've got Nabila Ramdani and Tom Slater with us this morning. Good to see you both. Tom, let's have a look at the vaping industry, should we?
Yes, so this is their message to the government on the verge of this policy coming in to ban single-use vapes, just making the point that whilst there is obviously a distinction between the single-use ones, which is what is going to be banned here, there's often brightly coloured elf bars, as they're often called, which the concern is that young people are buying them, and obviously you can get ones which you refill and so on. But they're making the point that single-use vapes and vaping in general has been so useful for people quitting smoking. I mean, the NHS, which is quite conservative on these matters, but still has suggested that vaping is like north of 95% safer. And I'm sure most people have this experience. Anyone who they know who's quit smoking, it's more often than not it's because they've switched to vaping or used that as a kind of bridge to stop. So it's just the unintended consequences of these things. And I get that there's concerns around littering, but, you know, you could... all sorts of things. You know, I'm against littering, but all sorts of things could be dropped on the ground. And it's just, again, there has been this move in various countries to clamp down on vaping. I just find it such a strange obsession, given the fact that as smoking cessation tools go, it's the best we've ever come up with, and yet the tendency is always towards clamping down on these things.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, trying to deter children from smoking is always a good idea, especially since these vaping devices come in different flavouring. They're apple-flavoured, strawberry-flavoured.
Well, can't adults enjoy a different flavour?
It's like tobacco-flavoured vape, if anyone's ever had it, it's horrible. So I think that's one of the things where...
That's interesting, isn't it?
Because no one, when people actually switch to vaping, they don't really necessarily what, because you can't, it just doesn't necessarily do the business. But I agree, this is an issue, primarily people are concerned about teenagers. One thing I would say is they're not moving on to smoking, so that, you know, you can kind of count your lucky blessings. Yeah. But at the same time, of course, you know, you don't want kids hooked on nicotine. But I think that's just a case for making sure that you clamp down on shots when they sell it to kids, rather than, you know, making it a across-the-board thing. Because even with the flavours and colours and so on, that is as much to appeal to adults, as it turns out, as it is.
What's the official age limit on a vape now?
It's 18, isn't
It is 18.
Yeah, same as smoking.
But aren't they more loaded in nicotine than actual cigarettes?
No.
Not necessarily.
No. But it's a way to get you hooked anyway. But you're saying studies show that they do not necessarily transition to...
Yeah, there's no gateway effect, it looks like, with kids, because smoking amongst kids has fallen off a cliff, it looks like. They're just not doing it.
And that has to be good, yeah.
Well, it used to be glamorous to hold a cigarette.
Yes, I don't know whether the glamour isn't there with it.
Yeah, I don't see it at all, yeah. It looks like you could have got a toy hanging out of your mouth.
Yeah, weird.
Nabila, can we have a look at the Sunday Express and this lifeline, we're being told, for some high streets coming from the Prime Minister?
Oh, yes. So let me get the Sunday Express.
It's £1 billion he's going to pour into our high streets.
Yes, indeed. I mean, this is a classic, in my view, pre-conference headline in traditionally conservative supporting newspapers. I mean, this is very interesting because, you know, high streets are in a terrible state across the country, and effectively the Prime Minister is pledging to pour £1 billion to revitalise those high street shops, not least of all because they face a massive threat from online retailers such as Amazon, for example. And it's also aimed at you know, revitalising communities, not just the shops, but the communities revolving around those shops.
Is there any suggestion as to what they're actually going to spend the money on?
No, but
how will you revitalise high streets just with money? It's more than that, isn't it?
Precisely, but I think this headline makes it clear that Sunak's focus for the conference is going to be firmly on economics. And, you know, his party is clearly in a bad way at the moment. They, you know, on average of 18 points behind Labour in the polls. But I think Sunak still believes that there's still a mistrust around Labour surrounding economics, and he still has a chance to win the next general election because of that mistrust that, you know, Labour are incompetent with numbers and incompetent with budget, and that's why he's going for it.
Well, well, I mean, it's got to be worth a shot from a political perspective, Tom.
Well, it's a narrow path to victory, but it's definitely there if he wants to take it, not least because things are so volatile at the moment. Like, you can see people's prospects in the polls rise and fall quite quickly. But he's in a strange position at the moment where his whole pitch, whether it's on some of the motorist stuff, whether it's on net zero, is essentially opposing policies that previous Conservative governments have brought in.
Yeah.
And that's a hard argument to land with the public sometimes.
Yeah, but they're clear crowd pleasers.
That's very true. And there's also he's making a distinction between himself and Labour, who very naturally want to stand by these kinds of policies, even if they kind of stare at their shoelaces when people say, would you keep it? That if you became...
Especially so since general elections tend to be general rejections. So he's got to come up with a firm economic plan to, you know, I mean... to counter some of the cheeky...
Oh, well, we're out of time, Billa. I hate to say it. But we shall catch up with you both a little bit later on. Thanks very much indeed. Let's get a quick check on the weather.